do it. Speak your truth. I got my man Myles with me. Super dope dude. So excited to be here with him. How you doing, my mans?
I'm good. How's everything?
Good, man. I cannot complain. Like I said, I'm really happy to be here with you. Just chopping it up a second ago. As y'all know, I'm always talking to my guests for like 30 minutes before we start recording. But me and Myles, we didn't do it that long today, huh?
Now,
So let's learn about Myles. Let's learn about Myles. Where are you from?
from Pittsburgh, California. I'm in the East Bay. Born and raised out here. Been out here my whole life, with the exception of a couple of years in college. So this is home for me. I'm a Bay Area kid at heart.
Yeah. You know, I never heard about Pittsburgh, California until you. Never.
It's, it's good. Not a lot of people do. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had the question asked me, school, whatever, and
Yeah.
I'm like Pittsburgh, and then they assume Pennsylvania. I mentioned something with California, and they're like, wait, there's one in California. I'm like, yeah, bro, it's like 30 minutes away from you. Like, it's not that far. Yeah.
See, I would just say I'm from there.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I never been to Pennsylvania before.
Okay.
So I don't know if I can rep that.
I feel that. Nah, I feel you. Because when you said it, I immediately thought about Pennsylvania, Wiz Khalifa,
Yeah.
But when people ask me where I'm from, and I tell them, like I used to say like Columbus or Cincinnati because nobody knew West Carrollton. Nobody knew where Dayton was until like the University of Dayton basketball teams got good. So it was like nobody knew what the hell I was talking about. So they'd be like, oh, well, if you know where Columbus is at, somewhere around there in that area. So I definitely feel that. Small town kids, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because everyone asked me, where's it at? So I always have to reference San Francisco because that's the city everyone else knows, San Francisco, Oakland. So I'm like, hey, I'm 30 minutes outside of this city, and then for them that puts it into a reference, okay, he's somewhat close to the Bay Area.
Yeah. That makes sense. I feel that. Yeah. Me and my family lived in Chicago for a little bit. So I would tell people that, I was from there. It sounded cooler, first of all. And again, it was easier. Everybody knows Chicago. But it was like, I'm from West Carrollton, Ohio. Like everybody, where is that? What is that? I feel them though, because until I came back, I was living in Chicago myself a couple of years ago as an adult, and I didn't realize how like country where I'm from is until I came back from a city like that. Yeah. I was like, wow, like no wonder why everybody says I have an accent when I go like to places like that, or I'm just like, man, y'all so mean, because we talk to each other for like, everybody talks for like 30 minutes. We can go to the gas station talking for like 10, 20 minutes. And you never met this person in your life. And I love it. When I was in Chicago, man, it was a complete opposite. People were looking at me so crazy for just smiling at them. And it was the complete opposite experience. I didn't know I was country, Myles, but I accept it now. I love it.
That's good. You embrace that. That's good.
You feel me? It's dope. You from Cali, though. I want to move out there one day, man. Maybe have a house out there one day.
It's nice living out here.
Palm trees.
Nice. Yeah, you get a little bit of everything, man. A little different culture, different experience with the food, with the people, everything like that. So it's a change of pace for sure. I know I was in North Carolina for a little bit, Durham, North Carolina. But even out here, it's a lot different.
Yeah,
a lot. We'll touch on that a little bit later, though.
That's what I was going to ask you that. But let's talk about your sports background first. Did you play? So you're a baseball player. Did you play any other sports besides that when you were growing up?
Yeah. So I played. My first love was actually basketball.
What?
Basketball was my thing. Yeah. So so my grandfather played basketball at the University of Portland, Oregon.
Nice.
My family all grew up in Pittsburgh, Antioch, which was like our neighboring town. So my family was a sports family. My grandfather, like I said, played collegiate basketball at Portland. So when me and my cousins were growing up, we're all close in age, within 2-3 years. Two other boys, one older, one younger than me, each by like a year and a half, too. So we're always super close.
Yeah.
So growing up, my grandfather, we would always go over to his house because we all lived in the same city. And he had a basketball hoop on the side of the house. So you know how it is. So we would play. So I'll never forget this day, man, when I was 6 years old, and this is the time of house phones. I'm a 97 born baby, right? So this is time.
Oh, you're so young. You talking like you old.
And some of Some of these listeners, I don't know the demographics. Some of them might be 18 years old talking about what's a house phone.
For real. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
mostly everybody older than me in like their 30s, couple
Okay.
40s, but mostly like I think the age is 28 to 34 is my most listeners yet.
Okay, so they know, right? So we had the cordless house phone. I remember I was 6 years old, and the way my house was set up was my room was in the middle, pretty much behind the wall of the living room. So I had a door that led to the kitchen and a door that led to the hallway.
Okay.
All right. So the way my bed was set up, I could see the door to the kitchen. I remember my dad's on the phone. We had a little white cordless house phone. And he looked in my room. He goes, I'm signing you up for baseball. And I'm like 6 years old at the time. And I had played like semi-organized, like T-ball and stuff like that growing up. But I didn't have any like real memory of that. So he peeks in my room. He goes, I'm signing you up for baseball. And I go, I want to play basketball because that's what I had the memory of. That's what I was playing all the time. He said, no, you're doing baseball. Now, my dad grew up playing baseball and football. Now at the time I didn't know. I thought it was just football because he coached high school and I was around them all the time. So he said, "No, I'm doing baseball." I cried like, "Oh man!" I was so devastated. I was devastated because I wanted to play. I wanted to play basketball. I was so devastated. But from then on, it worked out for me. Um, I developed well, was able to go travel when I was younger, pre-high school, the travel ball scene out in California as that was starting to like really grow into what it is now. And then I went to De La Salle High School, which out here is a prominent sports and academic school. One of the best in the country on both sides of it. So I was there, played 3 years of varsity baseball there, started my 3 years. And I was able to gain a scholarship to Fresno State, which is a Division I school out here in Central California. And then that didn't work out. But at the time, baseball, the transfer rules in the NCAA was a little different than basketball, football, some of the other sports. So like basketball and football, you can go D1 to D1 and be eligible for the most part. With baseball at the time, you had to go D1 to a lower level NCAA or junior college, or else you had to pretty much lose a year of eligibility or sit out a year if you went D1 to D1. So at the time, it didn't work out at Fresno. So I came back to the junior college level and then was able to go out and then go back out to North Carolina, play D1 ball up there. So that's a little brief of my sports history. But yeah, basketball was my number one thing. I played football for a little bit here and there in middle school, like 2 or 3 years. I did end up playing basketball 1 year when I was 9 years old. I had no feel. I had lost all type of rhythm, all type of coordination with it. I played like 5 games. It was a very short youth league. Had 1 point, had 1 free throw I made. I just no type of feel whatsoever. After that, I was like, I'm done.
What? Yeah. Maybe dad knew something.
Maybe he had to have, because lo and behold, I was growing like a bean until I got to like 8 or 9th grade, and I just hit a wall.
Wow.
Done.
He could see the future, man.
Yeah, he did. So I'm grateful for that decision, because if I would have stuck with basketball, I don't think I would have been able to play collegiately, at least for as long as I did. So
you never know. We got some people out here.
Yeah, maybe it could have worked out. I could have been, a real small point guard and finesse my way around and just, what I mean, be a thinker out there. But
how tall are you?
I capped at like a little under 5'11".
Oh, come on. You could have been you small, but still could have been a real good point guard. And they would have been like 6'1". So,
Yeah.
You got some size on you, so you would have been all right. You could have bullied your
way. I think what would have helped was as I grew up, I became like a better thinker out there. When it comes to baseball and football and stuff like that, like I was more cerebral with things. All right. So I was able to think through things. So that probably would have been able to help me a lot more than my physical attributes on the basketball court.
There we go. Hey, everybody got their thing, right? Everybody got a role, everybody got their skill. So
yeah,
nothing wrong with that. So how was it? you said you went to a prominent high school for sports.
Yeah.
And when we think of prominent, unfortunately, we don't necessarily think of people of color. Was your high school diverse? I know you're in California, you were speaking about there's a lot of people who look like us. Was your high school diverse or what?
The athletics were, but the rest of it wasn't. So a little bit of background of the high school. It's in a more affluent city, and it's a private high school, right? So there's tuition, obviously. There is like a scholarship type deal. So basically how that works is almost how college scholarships would work, not from the athletic side, but just from like the admission side. So where they take in like your middle school grades, your letter of recommendations, stuff like that. And then like it's almost like FAFSA plus like letters of recommendation and grades and stuff like that. So I was able to pay like 9,000 for the year, which was still for my family was still a lot, but that was like half the tuition at the time. Right?
Half.
That was half. So right. So so you can imagine, the type of kids that went there that weren't on, scholarship were, their families have more money, which in that area meant predominantly white families. The athletics, though, we were diverse. That's what football was our sport. Football, basketball, mainly football. We had a little movie made about us. We had a book, the whole thing. When you guys listening, when the game stands tall, it's a book, it's a movie. We had a national win streak, all that stuff. Wow. So that's what brought us prominence, and that's what brought us a lot of the diversity in there, because a lot of the high school athletes around the area, if you had the opportunity to go to the top athletic high school, you did what you could to go.
Exactly.
And it was one of those deals where you went there, the teachers, the administration, everyone cared about you. It was a great atmosphere. We pushed out almost 100% of the kids out to college, whether it be athletics, academic, whatever. We pushed them all out to college. No matter what sport you played, we pushed a ton of people out to the Division I level, to the collegiate level in general. I think like my senior year, look back on that roster, we had like 12 or 13 Division I guys on that team. So in the area, it's something unheard of. So with the diversity aspect of it, most of it was in sports, not so much regular students. But the athletes, yeah, you had between basketball, baseball, football, soccer, the minorities were in the athletic program.
As always, that's how it always is, Not that we are not good at academics, because at the end of the day, think we're smarter than everybody, people of color. And I don't mean that any bad against people who aren't, but just history. So it's on one hand, it's sad that that's what we are related with all the time.
Yeah.
But if that's what if that's what we great at, why not keep being the best at it?
Yeah. True. Speaking of one of the De La Salle guys, I was an athlete that proven super smart. Shout out Dylan Scott real quick. Just finished up his track and field career at University of Alabama, ran track and field at De La Salle. And now he's at TCU as a grad student. And he just posted something like a couple days ago. He was like a teacher's aide, teaching a class at TCU, as a student athlete as well. So shout out to him, De La Salle guy, another minority of Black man, who's out here showing he's more than just his athleticism. So shout out to that.
Yes. What can you speak maybe for yourself or even some of the people that the opportunity to go to a school like that and receive that type of education, whether it's for your athletic ability or not, for people of color specifically?
It was an amazing experience for me. It was De La Salle is a place that I hold very close to my heart. Mainly because of people I met there, the opportunities I was allowed to have. Really, just I was exposed to things I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. I was going to school with kids who had aspirations to do something. Like, yeah, their family had money. Their family may have, owned a business or did this, that, and the other. But walking in from freshman year, these kids had an idea of what they wanted for their future. And they had an idea of how to work towards it and what they wanted to do for it. You know, whether they wanted to be accountants or work in marketing or do, own a business or do tech, they had a freaking idea. And they weren't stuck up about it. They weren't, high nose, oh, I got money, this, that, and the other. They were like, no, this is what I want to do. I need to take these classes, these classes, these classes. I want to go to this school. They have this GPA requirement. I need to stay on top of my stuff. And that pushed me, as a kid that came from Pittsburgh, and it's not an affluent area. It's very much a generational town. Parents grow up there, kids grow up there, kids go to the local junior college, kids stay and work there, and the cycle continues type deal. Right. So the dreams and aspirations were different. It wasn't like, hey, I want to, make a bunch of money. I want to start working out of high school so I can make some money. The kids at De La Salle were just, hey, I need to go to college. I need to get this degree and this degree because I want to do this, that, and the other. And it's like, okay, like that's a different mindset that I wasn't exposed to. That's just from a day-to-day academic side. And then the athletic side of it, it was Division I type athletics from the start. And you played Division I basketball, you understand. I'm sure listeners, they have some college experience as well. The demand of Division I athletics is no joke. College athletics in general.
Yes.
From the time to the accountability to the time management to the work to the competition. I mean, we're in the baseball program going 11 and a half months out of the year, talking about double headers, talking about workouts, talking about this, that, and the other. We would have our section championship game like the last day of May or the first or second day of June, depending on when that Saturday fell.
Okay.
And then we would have finals that Monday through Wednesday after. And then the following Monday, we're back. And we're going for we're preparing, for 51 weeks out. We just had that last game and now we're preparing for the next one. We got 51 weeks to get after it.
Man.
And that was the same with all the sports. With football made it deep into the playoffs every year. They're at the state championship game, and the state championship game out here is like mid-December. It's just like the second week of December, so that would end their season. And then they would leave, or, we would be on Christmas break, and they would come back January and go.
So you play baseball even in winter?
Yeah, we would go until June, all the way up until about the time of the state championship game. And then we would take like 2-3 weeks off in that December, go through the holidays. And then we would come back like early January and do like some preseason stuff with, all the teams that just look like we're playing games, we're doing workouts, this and that. And then, we got into, I think tryouts ended up being like the first week of February or something like that. But that's how it was with all the sports. Basketball would have like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. shoot around. Football would have 6 a.m. weights. Soccer would do stuff in the morning. We would do stuff in the morning during summer. Other than that, during season or during school time, we would go like after school. But like I said, the people there cared about us. And they cared about it. Was an all boys school, so they cared about our maturation as men. And they taught us accountability, work ethic. They worked on our character as much as they worked on our game. So that's why it's near and dear for me, because they could have very easily said, hey, we just care about you as an athlete. Exactly. We want you guys to win this and that, and not cared about our personal development outside of the sport. So that's for me why it was such an amazing experience, because I grew up as a Black man, as a person, and I hold character traits from that school to this day that I probably would have never been able to acquire, at least not at that age.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, and that's awesome that you got to have that experience. And that's like one thing I was wondering when I first met you. I was like, how are these, like, they are so young. Like, how do they know about the things that you guys know about, or even not even that you know about it, that you are willing to do it and serve so young and do things so different than most young people your age, but it all makes sense. It's, you know, your village. I was just talking to somebody about that earlier. Who you have around you is so important, and you mentioned that too. That's awesome.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. My 4 years there, forever grateful for that.
Yeah,
And still to this day, walking on that campus, whether it be, to support a game, to help out at a camp, whatever like that, it still brings back great feelings because of what I know it brought to my life. So,
that's awesome. So what made you choose going to an HBCU after you went to a predominantly white school?
so at the time, I was at a junior college in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So like I said, I went to Fresno State, and with the D1 transfer rules, I had to go back down
Mm-hmm.
to a lower NCAA level or junior college, right? So I'm at the division. I'm at a junior college in my hometown at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the process with Central was a little weird. So with the California junior colleges, since there are so many Division 1 schools out in California, and a lot of them are pretty good academic schools. So what they like to do is they like to wait until baseball season in the spring. So they like to wait until like mid-spring, late spring to offer, roster spots. And a lot of the schools out there, we're a little pricey because we got a good amount of private schools out here. Right, you have like your Cals, your Stanfords, obviously, your UCLA's, all that stuff. But you got a handful of conferences that are strictly private schools. So I already had that in my mind of like, hey, if a school offers late, more likely than not, they're not going to offer money because with baseball, they're allotted 11.7 scholarships. And so how they do it is they break it up. It's a roster of 35. Sorry. So they break it up by portions, right? So one kid would have 25% athletic, and then maybe you fill the rest of the 40, 50, whatever with academic scholarship. All right. So my grades were good in high school or in college. Um, so I mean, I don't know. I said, okay, if they offer in April, May, more likely than not, they're not going to have money attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So knowing my own family financial situation, I was like, I don't want to take out debt. Thank God I was able to graduate with no debt. And, thank you, thank you. And I was like, I don't want to put my family in a situation where, we're struggling to try and make this tuition meet. Right. So Central came along, North Carolina Central came along early October, early in the fall of the process. And we talked and we talked, and I'll never forget it. He told me he was gonna call me one day, and I never got the call.
What?
And I didn't at that point I didn't know what happened. I didn't reach out again, this and that. And I just thought he, found someone else. I was like, okay, no big deal. It's early on. I had a good fall. I was like, all right, just leave it. And then one day he freaking cold called me. This was like 2 months down the road. He cold called me, and we hadn't had any type of conversation
Yeah.
outside of when he was originally supposed to call me. So he cold called me. I was at my grandparents' house, and I see the caller ID, Coach Kerner, North Carolina Central. I was like, okay. And when he just stopped talking to me, I didn't do any type of research in the school or anything like that. And I knew it was an HBCU. I didn't do any type of research on it. I was like, he's not interested anymore. So he answers the phone. I answer the phone, and we talk a little bit, and he offers me right there. And I was like, all right. So he offered me, and we set up a visit, and I went out there in January, early January of at this point it's like 2019, I believe.
Okay.
2018 might be 2018. But yeah, we went out there, and it was January. I don't remember if they were in school or not, but I know they were doing baseball. We went and saw some of the baseball practices. It was snowing. It was my first time in snow.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
So dope.
First time in snow. It's in Durham, North Carolina, and for those that aren't familiar with the area, it's Duke, UNC, NC State, and NC Central, all within about 30 minutes of each other. So you're talking at least two very predominant PWIs. right, with Duke and UNC, and you can throw NC State in there too if you want to count it. But UNC and Duke, two predominant schools, academic, athletic. You can say that anywhere in the school, and these people know what these schools are, right? So Central's in the cuts. The cuts. My first week there, we saw it was me and my roommates. I didn't have a car up there, but my roommates, one from Texas, one from Florida, they drove the car up there, right? So we would roll to school together, and Durham surrounded by, or Central surrounded by neighborhood, right? So my my first week there, we saw someone get stabbed in the neighborhoods. It was in the cuts, bro, like the cuts. But
that's what you mean by the cut. See, when we say the cut, we mean like in the woods, back in the back, in the woods.
Nah, we in the cuts, bro.
Okay, in that cut.
Yeah, we in the hood out here. But back to the question of like what made me really choose the HBCU was I was comfortable with the people. And thinking back on it, it's kind of weird because I was never really on campus like that. Because at that point, like I said, it was snowing. There's snow all over the ground. So they weren't going to walk us through campus because, stairs and all this stuff. They weren't going to have that happen. But I pretty much spent a day at practice with the teams and the coaches and the players. They, you've been through the official visit process. All right, so you've been a player on both sides of it. You know how that is. They're not always super welcoming about it, and the coaches aren't always very attentive with it. But I felt comfortable with it. The players that were there, the coaches that were there, I felt like, hey, this is a place where I can get better as a player, and this is a place where I feel comfortable playing for the coaches, And when I was able to get there, it became way more than what I ever thought it was. I got to experience the HBCU side of it when it came to the day-to-day school life, when I, got to interact with the other athletes, stuff like that. So it was an amazing time. But the reason why I chose this school is because I was just really comfortable with the people that were there.
That's awesome. You think it's because they look like you?
And that's the thing. With the baseball program, there wasn't that many. There was only, and that's the thing with the HBCUs, at least Central. I mean, who did we play that were HBCU? We played like North Carolina A&T.
Okay.
They're another HBCU. They had a good amount of brothers on the team. Norfolk State may or may not be, I'm not sure. We were in the Mid-Eastern Atlantic Conference. So some schools were HBUs, some weren't. I can't remember off the top of my head which ones were and weren't. I know A&T was. A&T did have a lot of brothers on the team. Us, for a baseball team, we had probably like 6 or 7, which is a lot for a baseball team. North Carolina A&T was like double. I'd probably say they had at least like 12, 14.
Wow.
Which is like unheard of for a baseball team.
Yeah.
But I just felt like I was super comfortable with everyone. I got more comfortable as I got on campus and, started doing, the day-to-day school stuff and started meeting more people. That experience brought it to a different level for me.
For sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the difference between playing with, you had white players on the team, or were they Hispanic, Latino?
They were white. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what was it like playing with more of you?
It was different. So for me, I hadn't really experienced that before. I think growing up, the most I ever had on a team was 4.
Okay.
3 or 4. It was at De La Salle in high school. 3 or 4 that played a big role. In North Carolina, it was a little different because you have your players that play like a legitimate big role on the team, and then you got the players that are just on the team that don't really see much time, right? So it was a little bit different experience for me as far as like, you know, how I was with them. But in North Carolina, we had Carter Williams. Carter's playing minor league ball with the San Jose Giants right now.
Nice.
He was one of our outfielders. We had Drake Murray. He was one of our infielders. We had myself, obviously. My senior year, we had Kobe Phillips, one of our infielders, played catcher for us a little bit. We had Matt Stanley. We had JVP. Yeah, so we were probably like 7 or 8. Yeah, and it was different playing with those guys. It was one of my first times, or first time in a long time at least, that I got to like relate to them. You know what I mean? On what it's like being Black and stuff like that. Just a Black experience. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there when all the social justice stuff happened. Because COVID ended my senior year, so COVID hit in March. And when our season got canceled, I was like, all right, well, I finished out the last 2 months academically, but I did that from California. So when everything really hit the fan in June, I was already back. But I was really close with some of the other athletes there, as well as some of the baseball guys, and they were going through it on Central's campus, doing marches and doing this, that, and the other. So I was, a little disappointed I wasn't able to experience that with them, because I knew that would have been a much probably stronger feeling being at a HBCU during a time like that. But as far as relating to the guys, it made it a lot easier to relate to them, especially because it was an HBCU and you knew we weren't, 5 out of 20 Black kids in the whole school or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it was, 90-95%, and the white kids that were in the school were athletes.
That's
so
awesome. Were your coaches Black?
No. So I had, so I don't even think at A&T the coaches were Black.
Wow.
If I remember right. No, so we had Jim Kerner, we had Coach Henry, Coach Batisto, Mincy, Porcelli, and then we had a couple of GAs, Cags and Velica. They were white dudes, but they were great men, man. They were great people. I definitely respect them for stepping into that atmosphere as a minority at a HBCU and caring for us like we were their own. And they didn't have to do that. They could have very easily came in and just been coaches, like a lot of college coaches do. They just come in and deal with the roster and they deal with the playing time, and then that's it. But their door was open time and time again. You come and talk to them about whatever. I remember Coach B, our pitching coach, he went to Georgia Southern, so he's familiar with being around Black folks. And he, I remember one of my first weeks there, I'm big into my faith, right? So I asked Coach B, I was in the coach's office and there were 3-4 desks in there, right? So I just openly asked, hey, like, do we have any type of like fellowship program or anything like that for the athletes on campus? And Coach B, our pitching coach, ran the FCA program, the Fellowship for Christian Athletes. Nice. So every Monday, I believe it was, we would have meetings, and we went to church together, the whole 9 yards. Coach B was like, hey, like, go to church, well, I'll give you a ride, whatever. So, the men that they had there on the coaching side, they were great people. And yeah, they weren't Black, coaching at an HBCU, but what they did for us as Black men and just, empowering us the best that they could, and showing respect and showing love to us, it was nothing but love for that staff over there.
That's awesome. And I'm glad that you elaborated on that for us, because you could have just said, no, they were white and that's it. But you took the time to, talk about that. So that means they really had a huge impact on you as a student athlete and as a person. I think that is beautiful. Because while you think everybody at HBCU was Black, I think that adds to the experience, having white teammates and, and or coaches. I think that's cool for both sides of it, for both people.
100%. Yeah.
That's cool. So what transpired in your life for you to pursue being a mental health advocate?
It's been a long journey for me to kind of realize what I wanted to do with it. It was always kind of in the back of my mind. I remember like taking a psychology class my senior year in high school. Like I mentioned before earlier, I grew into be like a very cerebral person with like how I think and how I go about things. So my senior year, I took the psychology class, and I was very interested in thought processes and why people thought this way and stuff like that. So that kind of opened the door for me there. But me being 17 years old, I was like, I'm gonna go to Fresno State. I'm gonna play 3 years. I'm gonna get drafted, and I'm gonna get on out. And so when Mr. Curry, my psychology teacher, was like, hey, in order to do this, you need, the bachelor's and you need a good master's. I was like, hey, that's like 6 years right there. I got 3 and I'm out. So I ain't doing it.
Yeah.
So for me, that's where it started, right? And so I get to Fresno State, and Fresno State was a completely different experience for me. So like I said, being at De La Salle was around an atmosphere that was, very caring about, the people that we are and the maturation of us as men and this and that. At Fresno State, it was different. It was my first taste of being a college athlete and being in a spot where it's 100% of what have you done for me lately type situation. So, me growing up, wanting to play professional baseball meant, I wanted to play Division I baseball, so this was a dream. Also going into it, I'm as high as a kite. Every freshman is, they have extremely high expectations, and I got there and I just got punched in the face. It was 100% all about, what have you done for me lately type deal. And I, like a lot of freshmen do, I went in and I struggled like the first month, and I pretty much just got buried to the point where, it was nothing academic or off the field, anything like that. I was a better student in college than I was in high school. But on the field, I wasn't producing very well, right? So it got to the point where I wasn't getting opportunities at practice to practice, basically. I wasn't in groups to do things like batting practice, to do things like team defenses and stuff like that. So that pretty much led to me. I was depressed and I was suicidal and I was going through it because I was like, this is my dream. I have, like I said, I had multiple teammates go off and play Division I ball, and I'm feeling the pressure of, hey, I'm a hometown kid, from a small town. People know I'm here. People have followed my development through either myself or my parents. I'm from a family that, doesn't have a lot of money to fall back on. If I go home and things don't work out, it's not like, hey, daddy owns a family business and I can just go work there and then go, take it over or anything like that. All right. So I'm feeling pressure on top of the fact that I get here and I'm like, this isn't anything that I thought it was going to be. So I was depressed. I was suicidal. I ended up walking away from the program at the end of that freshman fall, or no, the beginning of that freshman spring. So what happened was I came back and we had a conditioning test. Right. So I came back like the first day of practice, like I tweaked the hamstring. And I was like, I'm not physically able to do this conditioning test. Right. And so like the next day, he calls me into the office and he's like, you got 2 options. He's like, you either leave now in time for junior college ball, or I don't want to see you back here in 2 weeks. No practice, no field, no nothing. You're not coming back for 2 weeks. And when you come back, you have to do this, and that, and the other, and pretty much pass like our conditioning test and do like 3 or 4 other things baseball wise until he allowed me to practice. Now this time I'm like the second or third dude at my position. Like I'm not seeing the field. I can read the writing on the room. I'm not playing. And I already hated it. I'm depressed and I was like, and this is not for me. So I ended up leaving. I stayed and finished out my freshman year academically, but I wasn't with the team.
Okay.
So that's kind of what started it for me. And then moved on, went to junior college ball, and just honestly, just after that whole experience and trying to and really like getting a taste of what the business side of baseball was like, I was like, man, this isn't necessarily something I'm as excited about as I was when I was 16, 17 years old. So I went through baseball, honestly, really just for the hopes of putting myself into a position to financially be better, whether it be I meet people to where I can get a really good job or I end up playing professionally. That was for me, my thought process of like, hey, I'm going to use baseball to open up a door that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to open up myself. So after that whole experience, man, baseball was never really the same for me. I never really had that drive and that love for it. I worked out and did all that stuff strictly for the sake of, hey, I can't go out there and really hurt myself because I haven't done these movements in months. You know what I mean? So I was doing that stuff for more like self-preservation other than like the love for it. So yeah, that's Fresno State really opened up that mental side of it. That mental health side of it really just swung the door wide open for me. So that was really the experience that got me started on it. And then, like I said, COVID hit my senior year in North Carolina. So I came back, and at that time I was set to graduate that May. And I was like, hey, I'm good. I'm real straight off baseball. So I graduated with no debt, and I was working at Target. So I was working at Target for like a month. And when I originally came back from North Carolina, one of the coaches I knew from my junior college days, he was coaching at a school in Oakland, at Division II school. And he had heard rumblings of the NCAA giving us our eligibility back. So he was like, hey, do you want to come play? And I was like, I'm good. I'm ready to walk away from baseball. And my girlfriend was the one that convinced me to really go after my master's in counseling psychology. She mentioned how her grandmother was a marriage and family therapist, and her grandmother and I had a good relationship. And I was like, you know what, like this is something I can do, and I'll just work my way through school. And I was like, okay, like I can do that. I'll take it slow, whatever. I didn't know anything about the process, right? So Samari, this is a Tuesday. We're talking about this while I'm at work at Target, right? This is a Tuesday. On a Tuesday. At work. I don't know what time it is, but I just need you to know this is a Tuesday.
We're gonna say 3:30. All these T's, we're gonna keep it consistent.
Yes, right. So I need you to understand how fast I made this decision. So we did this on a Tuesday, right? I went over to Jane's house after work. So this had to be during the daytime, because I remember we had dinner and stuff. So this was during the daytime. All right. So I had texted Chad. Chad's the coach at Holy Names in Oakland that had contacted me before.
Okay.
And Jane had, sent me a list of schools that had the program. She was like, hey, I know someone that went to this school. It's like all online or something like that. So I was like, all right, cool. So I looked at it, and they didn't have the program anymore. But I looked, and just so happened that Chad's school had the program.
Nice.
And I was like, all right. I was like, listen. So I texted Chad, and I was like, on Tuesday, I texted Chad, and I was like, hey, your school has my program. If you guys still have a roster spot, I will play. And, he called me a couple hours later, and he was like, hey, we can get you a full ride, and we'll pay for everything. And then when you're done with your last year eligibility, then you'll be able to be a grad assistant, and that pays for the rest of the schooling the whole way through. And I was like, all right, I'll play. So my whole decision to get into this was like 6 hours long. Wow. So, yeah, that's how it worked out for me.
6 hours, Myles.
Yeah, changed my whole life, man. Changed the whole path of my life. Because I was, like I said, I was working at Target, and I had no plan. I was like, you know what? I have no debt. What I'll do is I'll just, everything I make is profit,
Mhm.
so I'll just, rack things up. And I was fortunate enough to have some De La Salle connections where one of my good buddies, his dad is the vice president of Bank of America. And I was
Wow.
like, you know what? Like, we were family friends, I'll keep in contact with him, see if there's any way I can get in, this, and that, and the other. And cool, I had some connections on that side, with him and then with a couple other friends. So I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'll just bring in the money, profit, save, and go that way.
That's awesome.
And then, yeah, so everything changed on
Thank
that
you.
Tuesday.
Man. So you said you are like a man of faith. You really believe, what you believe in. Do you think that that was fate, essentially, that was meant to happen?
Honestly, yeah. Yeah, because what had happened was, you know, by the time I got to North Carolina, like I said, I was at a point baseball wise where there was no real like motivation to keep going for the sake of baseball. It was more so to keep opening up doors that I wouldn't have been able to go through. So, my prayers changed a lot.
Mm.
It went from, God, please give me the strength to keep going. Please give me the strength to perform well today and do this, that, and the other. To, God, please give me a platform,
Mm.
right, to do great things, no matter what that is, whether it's baseball, whatever. I started praying for a platform to do things, right, to represent him well and to change people's lives. So that was a prayer for a long time,
Yeah.
because I wanted that opportunity. I was like, baseball probably is not going to be it for me,
Hmm.
so let me find an opportunity to do something that can really impact lives.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
And we need way more Black counselors, especially Black male counselors. My goodness. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of
Because,
course.
like you said, when you was young, you thought you was, going to be in the MLB making millions right now. And
100%. Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? I think, like you said, we all think that. And it's been even hard for me to accept because I'm like, man, look, I can still lace them up, but or like like my clothing line, I had dreams of like, hanging out with all these different celebrities and dressing them, being their stylist, or them being ambassadors for my clothing line. But yeah, while I can still do that, like you said, the bigger impact is stuff like this. This is the
Yeah.
stuff that's really going to change the world. When we talk about changing the world, money, we thought that was what was going to change the world, and technology, that ain't it. It's love and
Yeah.
healing and talking about these hard things, especially as people of color. It's very, very hard to talk about it. Men, I know it's hard for you guys to talk. I don't understand why y'all don't just talk, but it's hard for y'all to talk about y'all feelings. I get it. Black people, period, we don't talk about anything. So I get it, kind of, but it does frustrate me that men, y'all just won't just say what's on your mind. Cry one time, just one time, cry.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It make my brother, man, he's 16, so I get it with him. He trying to be a little tough guy, but sometimes
Yeah.
I'm like, please just show a little, like, are you in there? Hello, are you even in there? My
Yeah.
goodness, it really bothers me. Myles,
No.
do you have any advice for current student athletes, whether
Yeah.
it's about mental health or just general advice?
Um, yeah, man. I think the biggest thing for me to get over, and it might have just been because I was, I guess, a little bit more prominent. I had, I guess, a little bit more notoriety growing up with it, is, you don't have to try and live up to the stereotype
Yeah.
of whatever your status is. If you're a big time recruit, if you're, the star athlete at your school, or, if you're a bench warmer, it doesn't matter. You need to be yourself.
Yeah.
We're in the age of, I grew up and you grew up watching, all these movies and all these TV shows where the star athlete acted a certain way. The star athlete was popular and a little closed off, right?
Mhm.
And put on this facade of, I'm so tough and nothing can touch me and this, and that, and the other. And that's, far from the truth. Athletes are people too. They go through real life things. But don't try and live up to a stereotype, you
Yes.
know, You need to just go out there and be yourself. If you try and live up to the stereotype, you're just going to put yourself mentally in a hole, you know, and by the time you're done with your sport, you're probably still going to be in that hole, you know, and it's going to take you so much more time to try and get out of it, on top of trying to figure your adult life out, you know, your bills, whatever else you got going on, that's real responsibilities. So go out there, be a high school, middle school, college athlete. That's not afraid to be yourself, you know, because the people that really are going to embrace you are going to embrace your true self, and not whatever facade you're going to try and put on because you're the star athlete. So that's my advice that I had to really figure out for myself. I was like, hey, I'm a big comic book nerd. I don't like all the new music, you know, I don't keep up with it. I'm not going to be the one, you know, be on top of all this pop culture stuff. I like what I like, you know. So for me, I had to really embrace that and stop trying to be like everyone else, you know, just because I was a star athlete. So that's my advice to everyone listening.
Thank you for saying that. For real. I went through that as well, trying to be that same person, the jock, basically. And that wasn't me, but also people thought that of me and treated me that way. So I started acting that way. Like, okay, if you want me to play this role, and I didn't think of it like that, then this all came from reflection. Like people become who you want them to be, essentially. If you keep treating people a certain way, that's who they're going to become. So I respect you saying that. And it's not easy. Of course, everybody want to be cool, but like you said, be you. You don't have to be the star player and hang out with the other star players. You can hang out with the band. I don't want to call them the band geeks, but with the band kids, and the kids who love art, and the kids who love comic books. We laugh at kids, or I used to, that like anime. But what's wrong with that? Pokemon cards and all that. It's all good. Everything is love. Everyone is beautiful to me, and it's crazy how we judge people just by looking at them or what they have, what they do, instead of just loving our own life and appreciating what we have. So thank you again for saying that. Most importantly, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. This has been dope. I loved our conversation. And we got to hook up for a part 2, I think.
If you whatever you want to talk about, I'm open. If you want to talk about Black men when it comes to mental health, we can talk about that.
Oh, Myles.
Yeah, we can go into that. You got some time?
You gonna do it right now?
I'll give you a little bit right now. We had this conversation actually earlier in the spring with some of us. One of the soccer players at my school, she had like a little paper she had to do, so she asked some of us. So maybe my take on it is, when it comes to Black men, the kids learn from the adults. And I heard this analogy on the I Am Athlete podcast with Brandon Marshall, Ocho Cinco, all those guys. That's a good one if you guys are interested in podcasts as well. They were talking about, I forgot who brought it up, but they were just like looking at it from, a girl-boy perspective. When a girl falls and she scrapes herself up or whatever, she starts crying, the first instinct is to validate her emotions. Right? Hey, it's okay, cry out, whatever, validate what she's feeling at the moment. You flip-flop to the other side, a boy falls down, he cries, something happens, he shows those emotions. It's, hey, man up. Hey, don't do that. Be tough. You're a big guy, right? You're tough. You're a big man, right? And what happens, boy? boy, right? And he learns to bottle that stuff up. Because he's been taught that the vulnerability of the emotions are not what men do, right? And that stuff grows into young teenagers and young adults that when they feel something, nah, I'm good, bro, I'm straight. They go through a breakup or a loss or something that entices this negative emotion, and they, bro, I'm good, like, don't worry about me, bro, like, I'm straight, this and that. And they bottle it up, right? So I really think the responsibility falls on the adults in the lives, whether it be fathers, uncles, father figures, whatever, to show them that it's okay to show emotion, to be vulnerable, right? To not be okay, right? That's okay. To validate the feelings and to learn how to process them in a healthy way. Talk about it, write it out, whatever, feel whatever it is when it's happening. Okay. And then we process it, we work through it. Not just, hey, now put that away. We can't deal with that right now. You got a game to go play. All right. Or you got this and that and the other to go do. Like, you can't deal with that. You can't, have these things because you have other responsibilities you have to take care of. It's like, no, like, we gotta, let's process this stuff. Let's deal with it. So that's where I think it comes from.
For sure.
I think it starts young, and I think it builds up, and it just, generations, continue to have the same type of thing because it starts young, and the fathers and the uncles and the father figures, whoever it is that are not validating these feelings, they're teaching them, hey, it's okay to bottle it up. This is what you should do. This is how men act.
Yeah.
And they grow up and that's what they think. And then they pass everything along.
Man, 1000% agree. Generational curses that you are breaking. You have talked to many different people about mental health. What are some similarities that you see across different races and ethnicities?
Just that you'd be surprised, how people feel, you know what I mean, and what they go through. One thing that I've seen is a lot of people just have stereotypes. They're not always the same things, right? But you may see, a white girl in a predominantly affluent area, and you may assume that, hey, they live this type of lifestyle and this, that, and the other, and they don't have anything going on because they have money or this and that. When in reality, there's a very high chance that, yeah, this person does go through things. Right. On the flip side of it, you may have someone in a less affluent area, no matter what race it is, and they may think, hey, man, this guy, lives this type of life and goes through this, that, and the other. And it may not be that way. So what I've come across is everyone has assumptions that gets made about them. Right. But everyone has their own story. And that's the one thing I definitely want to push across is we've all heard the cliche, don't judge a book by its cover, right? But there's a reason why these cliches last as long as they last, because they're true.
Exactly.
Right? There's a reason why they get passed down from generation to generation.
Yeah.
Right? So take the time to get to know people. No matter what you think of them at first, take a chance to get to know them. I guarantee you everyone has a story that you would not have thought that this person went through.
That's real.
Right? So take the chance to get to know them, take the opportunity to talk with them, not talk, with other people about them and not be like, hey, so-and-so said this, not and the other about you. No, go face to face, go talk to this person. Hey, tell me about yourself, this and that, whatever. You'll have an honest conversation about it. But back to your question, what have I run into? Everyone has assumptions made about them.
Yeah.
And more often than not, those assumptions aren't true. It's very much he said, she said stuff. So that's what I've run into a lot with the mental health journey.
For sure. So you being a man, let's say you have a son. What do you think you would teach him when it comes to his mental health and self-care?
Communication. I think that's the root of it. Because if they don't know how to communicate, they won't talk about it. They may feel it and they may recognize things, but if they don't know how to talk about it, if they don't have a safe space to talk about it, then they won't.
Exactly.
So I think that's the biggest thing that I would, instill in my son is just, hey, like, let's talk about things. Let's create a safe space early. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about mental health right away.
Yeah.
But just opening the door to have conversations about how they're doing, about other stuff, so they feel like, hey, I can go and talk to dad about whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be about sports or school, right? Or my responsibilities. Dad's going to talk to me about movies or about life or about whatever. He's going to tell me stories, right? The door's open to talk about all these different subjects. So as children, they're going to be like, hey, I can talk to dad about anything. I can talk to dad about any different subject. So communication is definitely going to be the biggest thing, and just opening that door to create a safe space for them to talk, because we've all had, people in our life where it's like, hey, I can, whether it be friends or adults or whatever, like, hey, I know I can talk to this person about this subject, right?
Yeah.
Because this is what they're always talking about. So I know I can talk to them about that, but I can't talk to them about this thing because they don't never talk about that. So I don't know what I'm going to get from them, you know? So if we can open that door and talk to them about a wide variety of things, really talk to them about it, honestly about things, then mentally they're going to be like, I can bring this to him and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Right. Because we talked about stuff like this before. Right.
Okay.
So I know, hey, he can process this, he can help me with it. So that's it. Communication.
I love it. Do you think you would be able to communicate what you were going through, or, even have the bravery to speak about your mental health if you didn't see other men, especially other men who look like you, speaking out about their mental health in the recent years?
No, probably not. Honestly, I don't think so. What really helped me was definitely that podcast I listened to, the I Am Athlete one. So I was able to see, Brandon Marshall, who, was a predominant athlete in the NFL level, and, Ocho Cinco and Fred Taylor and Channing Crowder, but mainly Brandon was, a huge advocate, for speaking out. And, almost every episode, he would mention his own mental health journey, and it got to the point for me as a listener, yeah, I already know this stuff. But what dawned on me was like, hey, there might be someone listening for the first time that doesn't know this about him, right? That it may click for them, like, hey, it's okay if you talk about it. But another thing is, I went through therapy myself. I had to do it for school, for my major, to do a certain amount of hours with therapy. But it quickly got to a point where it was super helpful for me.
That's
Just
awesome.
being able to communicate and have a safe space to talk about that type of stuff, right? And be vulnerable about it. So yeah, those two things for me, gave me the courage, and therapy gave me the practice in order to talk about these things.
For sure. What are your goals with therapy? Like, do you want to get more Black men in therapy, Black people in general? Do you want to, I guess, target a certain group of people? What's your goal with being a counselor?
The broad goal is strictly just to help people.
Yeah.
Despite whatever demographic. I thought a little bit about, what it will look like to help, different generations, whether it be the generations that are, you and I, that are either getting ready to be parents or already are parents, so that way they can pass down their knowledge to their children and so on and so forth. Or do I really focus on, go straight to the point and go straight to the issue with the kids, and instill it in them? I haven't really, really decided on where to go with that or what demographic to go to.
Okay.
But definitely helping people. And, within the last couple of weeks, I've been pushed more and more towards the African American minority community. But, I don't want to necessarily keyhole it, just because if I can help people, I'm going to help people.
Exactly.
And I can't necessarily control, who gives me a call as a therapist and who reaches out to me like, hey, I want to start going to therapy. I can't really control the demographic of it. But yeah, I just want to help people. But the African American community, especially, we need this a lot.
Yeah, I'll be thinking about going back to school, but yeah, no. So I'll leave you to it. And any way I can help the people, I'm gonna do it. This might be the way. We got Google, it's a bunch of research papers on there. So I try to get my education, but I think that's dope of you. Like I said, as a young male of color. So let me ask you this before I start on my little rant. I've talked to a lot of Black women about therapy and them going to therapy, and they all typically choose a therapist who looks like them, another Black woman, whether they're older, same age, younger. Is it like that for men? I've been wanting to ask somebody this, so look at God. Is it like that for men too, or is it just like you would feel comfortable talking to anyone?
I'm not sure. I think it really depends on the person.
Okay.
For me, I'm the only person I know. I'm the only male that I know that's gone to therapy. And for me, I Suzanne was the first therapist that called me back. So how the process for me was, I went on my online insurance and I looked through their little mental health database with all the therapists, and I called the people close to me, and either I didn't get an answer on the phone call, I didn't get email back, whatever. Suzanne was the first one to call me back. And
Wow.
Suzanne is a, later 60s white woman with colored hair,
Suzanne sound dope.
right? And she lived a couple minutes away from my grandparents' house in my city, and we hit it off right away.
That's awesome.
So for me, it was just about who do I feel comfortable enough opening up to, and right away with her, we created a relationship where we could open up to each other. Right? She shared a little bit about her life. Obviously, I talked about myself. We were able to create that relationship where I could, come to her with anything. And at least with the suicidalness of it, or my suicidality, I only mentioned that to one other person before in my life, before Suzanne. And
Yeah.
that was over text. So I never, Suzanne was the first one where I, mentioned it in person.
Wow.
So, for me, it was just about who was I comfortable with. But I definitely understand what you're saying, when it comes to African American women, wanting to choose someone that they're, that looks like them, or kind of having a lengthier process to choosing a therapist.
Yeah.
I think it just depends on a person though, because some people are a little bit like me, like, hey, I'm comfortable with this person and we're cool. And then other people, maybe like, hey, I've had these certain type of experiences. I need to talk to someone who I think has had these type of experiences,
That's real. That's real. Thank you, Myles.
Of course.
You're so smart. So
Thank you.
so deep. Anything else you want to talk about? Like I said, we got time.
No, man, I think that's all I got off the top of my head. But yeah, man, go. If you haven't already, try therapy, or at least try talking to someone about things.
Yes. Yeah.
There's power in conversation and power in communication. So,
Yeah.
Definitely, if you haven't already, give it a try. Definitely give it a try. I think it's very worth it.
It's hard, but let's see if this maybe would help people. When you expressed your desire to commit suicide to Miss Suzanne, how was that for you? Like, I'm sure at first it was very difficult, but then what was it like after that?
I mean, I was able to mention it the first time with her, and Suzanne was the one that asked the question, because we had, I talked to her about my classes and stuff like that. Because obviously, I'm trying to be where she is at, so I'll talk to her about what I'm learning in classes, and we would go back and forth about that. So one time we were talking about suicide in class, and how people react to that, the people that are close to the ones who completed suicide. So I talked to her about that, and then she was like, have you ever thought about it? And that's when I answered the question. I was like, yeah, this, that, and the other. And then after that, I mentioned it a handful of times. I've done it in interviews like this. I've done it to people, and yeah, so it was a freeing feeling. So like I said, I had never said it in person before that. But now after, it's been a handful of times, at least on very public settings where anyone can watch these videos and see, hey, this person's done this, that, and the other. So I probably wouldn't have, if I didn't go to therapy for it, if I didn't go to therapy and would have said it in therapy, I probably would never mention it again. Because for me, it was a suppressed memory.
Yeah.
Thinking back on it, I very much remember vividly what was going on, but outside of mentioning it with Suzanne, it was very much suppressed. Very much. I was 18 years old at the time. I didn't mention it until I was like 21, I believe. And I didn't mention it again until I was 23. So, and now I've, mentioned it a handful of times since that therapy session.
Yeah, man, I can understand that. Our stories are weirdly very identical. But we're gonna do a part 2 because I still want to get I might do like a little survey with some men and ask them about the, how they choose a therapist, because that's really interesting. But I think we need to do a part 2. And
Okay, yeah.
yeah, sometimes I get like real I don't know, not shy, but just not sharing my story because I feel like people heard it too much, or it's not about me, it's about y'all. But the next time I'll share more of mine, because when you were like, when you we transferred around the same time, or like when you stopped playing, I wanted to stay at UConn and finish, but he wouldn't let me. So like there's so many things that are very, that are identical or either very similar. So deeper than that. But those are 2 I'm gonna leave you with. The 2
Okay.
I'm gonna leave y'all with. But Myles, thank you. It's been real. I appreciate your openness and your willingness to extend the interview for me to teach us about Black men and mental health. And your answer, I mean, it makes complete and total sense to me. And I hope all you Black men listening, y'all listen to Myles. Y'all ain't gotta listen to me, but listen to Myles. Myles, you got anything else to leave us with?
No, man, I said just Samari hit on it a little bit earlier, man. You show love, try and touch some people's lives. Try and, I believe that's the best thing that we can do with our own lives, is go and touch other people. So go out and do something nice for someone. I don't care what it is, go do something, go open the door, go buy them something. I don't care, go do something nice for people.
Yo, and like we said, be yourself, and as always, speak your truth.
Yes.
Thank you, Myles.